New York Jets owner Woody Johnson and head coach Aaron Glenn, along with GM Darren Mugie, have made their statements about Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers. He will not be returning, as reported a few days ago by Jay Glazer. But now, while not officially official in terms of the paperwork, officially going to happen, and at least according to everybody who will be making that decision. I'm Glenn Naughton with Jet Nation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can get registered as where you can join the most active Jets message board on the web. And I just finished explaining to my friend Dylan that I just woke up. So pardon me being a mess, basically. A lot like the Jets. This is a tribute to the Jets. The New York Jets and the way they run the organization. I thought, you know what? I'm going to be a friggin' mess on the show tonight and just walk around bumping into walls and not knowing what the hell I'm doing. Dylan, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. That's pretty par for the course. Everything seems to be a mess currently, whether it's the Jets Twitter streets or just everything that comes with the decision of moving on from Aaron Rodgers, whether you agree with it or disagree with it. I think now we're seeing some of the reporting wasn't necessarily accurate from Diana Rossini about how much the Pat McAfee show really played into it, but it seemed like it was going down a messy path where it was going to be okay. We're going to now get the Jets side and then Aaron's side of it. Maybe that's not the case anymore, but at this point, I just kind of hope the guy retires because I don't want to watch him play for another team in 2025 and potentially be good because I don't think the Jets are going to be equally as good because they've moved on from him. But of course, without a quarterback in place, it's hard to really analyze what the expectations should be.
Yeah, I think the only thing that might still be driving him to play is his where he stands all time. He's literally,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's 8 touchdown passes behind Brett Favre, the guy who didn't really treat him all that well for the first few years of his career. And I could really see him sitting there thinking, damn it, I want to pass that guy before I hang him up. I think maybe if he had 2 Super Bowl rings, he might, because he would have that on Favre. But Favre's got 1 ring, he's got 1 ring. Um, yeah, I think if he can pass Favre on another list, he would really like that. I mean, listen, he flew out to talk to the team. He clearly is willing to come back to play football. It's a matter of how willing is he. It's when I mean, as much as, and we'll get into this in a minute, right? The lack of options for the Jets at quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is probably feeling the same way. Lack of options for him. There's not a ton of openings, and for the teams that, I mean, is he a good fit in some of these places? And yeah, Diana Rossini saying it was McAfee show. I think it was primarily money. That's just my opinion, but I don't think the McAfee show helped, and I don't think it's that he was doing the McAfee show. And I talked about this earlier on Play Like a Jet with Scott Mason. We covered it on his mailbag show. I think if Rodgers was going on there every Tuesday or whatever, talking about football and X's and O's, the Jets wouldn't care. But it's the fact that it's, I don't wear, earbuds because they cause brain whatever. And this is what ayahuasca's like. I think they were kind of looking at that like he's a football guy, but he's not really going on. I mean, they do talk football too. But he says a lot of weird stuff, which I don't care about. I don't think he said anything this year that impacted. I don't think the Jets would have gone to the Super Bowl if Aaron Rodgers hadn't done the McAfee show.
Right.
I don't think there was really an impact there. But I don't think it was a zero. I don't think it was the reason, but I don't think it was a zero. I think the reason was, and it's funny because I never really looked at it. My focus this whole time has been about next year's dead cap hit if he played this year, 62 million or whatever it was. But as Rich Samini pointed out on his podcast, of course, that would have been in addition to what they would have paid him this year. So I think the total, if they would have played him this year, and again, if a pay cut was an option, who knows? But as his contract is currently constructed, Aaron Rodgers would have cost the Jets roughly $84 million to play one more
Mm-hmm.
season. That was not going to happen. Was he amicable to a $30 million pay cut? Well, guess what? 50 some million is still a lot for a guy who was bottom 10 in several major quarterback categories. So, you can't produce at the level he did and and expect that kind of money. So the Jets move on. It sounds like they're going to take the hit and split it up, which surprised me, Dylan. I don't know how you feel about that. And I understand, cap's going to go up and they'll still have plenty of cap next year. But I just felt like, and sorry if this is controversial for some Jets fans, I don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl. So I'm just throwing that out there. I know that means I'm not a real fan and I should support another team, but I don't see Tyrod Taylor hoisting the Lombardi Trophy for the Jets next year, or Jordan Travis, or whoever it is. So I thought, take the whole hit now. Just get all the money off the books. By not doing it, not a huge deal, because they will still likely have 120, 130 million in cap space next year. So fine. Well, less than that if they extend some of their guys. But the money will be there. But I still felt like, just get it all done this year. They won't get it all done this year. So is there a plan, Dylan? Because that was my first thought. I guess they have a plan, like at quarterback, where they want some money available. We'll go through the list, but would you have taken the big hit all in 1 year, or what?
I mean, it's so hard to say definitively one way or the other because if they want to go a veteran quarterback route, it would probably make more sense to split the money up so that the cap hit isn't as large this year so they can afford to put a new quarterback on the books for this year, like a Justin Fields or a Kirk Cousins or a Derek Carr or any of the options we'll get into. But if they didn't and they just wanted to get a rookie quarterback regardless, I don't think it matters because you're trying to reset the quarterback cycle anyway. So to me, I don't know. It doesn't really I'm not mad at the decision one way or the other if they want to do it. They're only allowed to designate 2 post June 1 cuts. So that is one of them if they decide to. So that is going to make it a little bit more interesting how they decide to do the roster stuff because there are people that would benefit from being post June 1 cuts as opposed to pre June 1 cuts. So I guess in that aspect, maybe you should just take the whole hit up front. We saw the Broncos do it with Russell Wilson, and it seemed to work. Obviously, they went to the playoffs, but they had a quarterback and a Hall of Fame coach to go along with it. So those things need to happen right for the Jets. I don't know. It's tough to say one way or the other, and we'll get into the options. But I guess until they have a guy in the fold, it's hard to say which option is the best. But I'm not a fan of any of the veteran quarterbacks, so to me, you could take the money either way. If it's a matter of okay, we can't sign X amount of player or X player in free agency because we took the hit all this year, then yeah, I guess that makes a bigger difference to me. But the money was like the last thing to me that I cared about. All I care about is this team winning and turning around the playoff drought. And truthfully, I just think they got further away from it. And that's not to say that they can't get close to it this year, but like you're selling me on a vision of 2026 now being the year we were supposed to be competitive. Like I thought the expectation would have been playoffs with Rodgers, whether it's 9 and sneak in or whatever. So I don't know. Everything, the whole expectation just kind of changes, and it's wait and see. But the money to me was like the last thing that I cared about.
Yeah, Woody Johnson, by the way, of course, as you would expect, had a statement.
Good old
He
Woody.
says, what's that?
Good old Woody.
Yeah. He says, I personally want to thank Aaron for his time with the New York Jets. His arrival in 23 was met with unbridled excitement, and I will forever be grateful that he chose to join us to continue his Hall of Fame career. From day one, he embodied all that it meant to be a New York Jet, embraced our fans, and immersed himself in our city. That is what I will remember most. That is what I will remember most when I look back at his time here. He will always be welcome, and I wish him only the best in whatever he chooses to do next. Aaron Glenn commented and basically said last week that they met last week, or last week we met with Aaron Rodgers, shared that our intention was to move in a different direction at quarterback, with Moogie saying it was important to have this discussion now to provide clarity and enable each of us the proper time to plan for our respective futures. We want to thank him for the leadership, passion, and dedication he brought to the organization and wish him success moving forward. So standard, press department, press release, whatever you want to call it. It's what you expected to hear once Rodgers was officially leaving. So as Aaron Glenn said in his introductory presser, as Dylan and I go over these free agent options, buckle up because That's going to be required here when you hear this list. Number one, of course, the number one free agent quarterback on the market is a player the Jets would never be lucky enough to have on their roster, if we're honest. Sam Darnold, free agent quarterback Sam Darnold of the Minnesota Vikings. Jets fans, if you're not familiar with him, he had a career year this past season, went to the playoffs, is expected to fetch, well, at least the estimates I've heard, sort of a $40 million a year contract, maybe 30, maybe 35. He'll be in that 30 to $40 million range. He's not coming to the Jets. Sam Darnold is not coming back here. He's been there, done that. If he were on the verge of being out of the league and the Jets offered him a contract, he might consider it. But he's not going to do that. I think he lands in Tennessee or Vegas. Why wouldn't you choose Tennessee or Vegas if you were Sam Darnold? You can go play somewhere where you pay little to no taxes. If you go to Vegas, you're going to have great weather. You're going to have a great building. You're going to have no taxes to pay. You're going to hang out with Tom Brady when you're at work. You come to the Jets, you're playing in an air conditioner, it's gloomy, and you're hanging out with Woody Johnson. So I think Sam is out. Where are you on the Sam train, Dylan? Do you want him back? Do you think he would come back?
I would take him back, of course. I don't see it happening. I mean, I think this is one of those things where it's like you should just be happy that your ex found someone else and is happy type of thing. Like maybe we're not happy with who we've found since that person, but as long as they're happy, we can at least be a little bit happy. So it's one of those things with Sam where like I would love if he came back. I don't think he would want to come back after all the BS.
No.
And two, like what happens if he comes back and he's more of the Sam that he was before he got to Minnesota, like he was just around one of the top coaches in the NFL. So there's just a lot of things that could go wrong that would make everybody now hate Sam Darnold. And it's like let's just keep our feelings where they are about Sam. We would love to have him back, but I don't think it's the right fit.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm using the Spot Rack free agent list, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Number two
I
on
see
their
him
list.
getting like a $30 to $40 million contract as well. I don't think he's a $50 million a year guy, and I don't know what the franchise tag value exactly is, but he deserves a bit over that based on what he was able to do with Minnesota. But I agree, Vegas probably is the team that I would project him to go to. I think that's a great situation for him based on what they've been putting together coaching wise.
And it'll be interesting to see if Minnesota does a tag and trade, because have a player that good and let him walk out the door for nothing. I mean, you'll get a comp pick, that's fine, but still, you could probably get a lot.
Knowing that you only have McCarthy on the bench and he's injured and has had 2 mid-season surgeries, so I mean, it's a tough one. That's maybe Rodgers. That's the situation where he goes to, completes the Favre cycle, but. That's going to be tough how they handle. They'll probably be the biggest quarterback domino as far as what do they do, and that's going to kind of dictate the rest of the quarterback market.
And Minnesota did say at the NFL honors, Sam Darnold is going to be a big part of what we do moving forward. I don't think they would make that type of statement if they meant we're going to tag and trade him. Like it's going to be big for us.
Yeah.
We got big plans moving forward. But listen, could it be lip service? Yes, but it sounded a little more definitive. I didn't expect anything that definitive or anything that strongly worded.
Mm-hmm.
But so that brings us to the next best option on the list per Spot Rack, or the second guy listed. Another guy some Jets fans may have heard of, a quarterback out of BYU by the name of Zach Wilson. I don't know how folks feel about that. Let's just skip right over that. Let's stop being silly. I'll tell you what, though. Right after Zach Wilson might be the only guy I would not take over Zach Wilson, and that is Trey Lance, who a former first-round pick who threw about 16, 17 passes in college, and John Lynch still drafted him. Not just drafted him, traded all of the picks in the universe to move up and get him. If John Lynch hadn't stepped in it with Brock Purdy as Mr. Irrelevant, I don't know if that guy has a job right now. Like it's that pick was 10 times worse than Zach. I think he's played 1 game, and you gave up how many 1s and 2s to go up and get him?
3 1s.
Jesus, my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Let's get to, we're going to start getting to the good players now, the good options, guys. Get ready. You know, I feel pretty comfortable doing these guys in chunks of 3 or 4 at a time
Sure, that's fine.
because it's that kind of list.
They're all in like tiers. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there are many tiers. Lots of tiers.
TEARS.
Yes, exactly. Nothing but tears. Ozzy Osbourne playing in the background. No more.
Literally playing in the background.
Next few guys, we got Jacoby Brissett, Taylor Heineke, Marcus Mariota, Drew Lock, and Andy Dalton. Who are you taking in that group?
You want to get mad at the person who made the list, but like this is all they had to write about. Like this is all they have. Like this, people got mad at Connor Hughes' list earlier in the week too. Like these are the people.
This is like if the movie Saw was a list of free agents. This is what it would be.
Yeah, I mean, I saw some people say Andy Dalton would be intriguing, but like, I'm sorry, you're just getting a different version of Tyrod Taylor at that point. So like, how many Tyrod Taylor type quarterbacks can we have? Over under, Glenn, 2.5 quarterbacks start for the Jets in 2025.
Oh, way over.
Like, what are we doing? So like, I don't know. None of those guys matter.
Between Tyrod and any of these guys, well, that as far as off the top of my head, some of these guys might stay healthy a little longer than Tyrod.
Sure.
That's it. And that's not a big deal. It's not like, phew,
I can't even say Andy Dalton, like, he got hurt playing football. He got hurt in a car accident, but, like, he got hurt, and then Bryce Young had to come back in for the Panthers. So, like, things happen, and it's just weird how, like, you know, none of these guys are going to stay healthy for a full season, in my opinion. Maybe Taylor Heineke, but, like, the way he plays football, he's vulnerable to hits. He plays, like, tough and aggressive. So, like, I don't like that one either. So, no, none of those really appease me.
Okay. So on this next batch of 5, I would say is the guy that I would take. Having gone through the list earlier, see if you can guess, Dylan, who I would want out of this group of 5 if I had to take one of these guys to take over for the Jets. Jarrett Stidham, Justin Fields, Joe Flacco, Jameis Winston, and Mac Jones. Of those 5, who do you think I would take?
I want to say Jameis, but I feel like we've already discussed that you don't want Jameis because he's too much of a liability. But I guess I'd say Jameis because that's probably the only one that I'd go for. It's definitely not Mac Jones. I know that.
You know, funny enough, it's not Mac Jones, but it's because that dude is such a world-class D-bag.
Oh,
like, he is impossible.
Yeah.
If you can root for that guy, there are certain tells. There are little things human beings do that let me know you are not a good person. And cheering for that guy to do well at anything in life tells me you're not a very good person. It is not Mac Jones. It's Justin Fields, Dylan.
It is. Yeah, I was gonna say, is it Fields? I was gonna ask, but I didn't want to.
Listen, he's not good, but at least here's what Justin Fields brings. The possibility, the upside, maybe the light comes on and he becomes something. Because with all of these guys, with any of these players you add, you're not doing anything this year. You're going to be bad no matter what. However, Justin Fields is the only guy that you can look at, as far as I'm concerned, on this list. And, you know, I'm trying to think of the name. I wrote it down earlier. There was a Detroit reporter, Dallas reporter may have been. Someone close to Aaron Glenn. Where did I put this? That's annoying me now. Because I always forget, and I took the time to write it down, and now I lost the damn piece of paper.
Oh,
anyway.
This is what happens when Glenn tries to give credit to somebody.
No, I found it. Give me a second. Got to find the right page. Am I going to have to put my glasses on, too? Dave Burkett of the Detroit Free Press. There you go. Familiar with Aaron Glenn. He went on Scott's show. He went on Play Like a Jet. And he said that he wholeheartedly believes Aaron Glenn wants more than anything a dual threat quarterback. Justin Fields is a dual threat quarterback. Problem is his biggest threat is to run. But even still, he is a guy who can run it. He can kind of throw it. And again, this herein lies the issue, at least in my mind, with hiring a running backs coach to develop your quarterback. Like if you had a proven quarterback coach, or even just a guy who had done it okay, like an all right job of it, you can say, all right, maybe he's the guy to unlock Justin Fields. Now, the chances that a running back will get the best out of Justin Fields, I don't feel like that's the best option, or I don't feel like it's very likely, I should say, but I still think it's the best option. I think if we're talking free agent, because trade is an option too. We'll talk about some trade options. But as far as free agency, I think Justin Fields, which my understanding is the Steelers are moving on. Did I see a tweet today?
I think they're moving on from both him and Russ. That's what it seems.
Yeah.
But they're not pursuing Aaron Rodgers. That they've also made
Yeah.
that pretty clear.
I can see Tomlin not wanting that too, the McAfee stuff and all that. Anyway,
But yeah, Fields,
I would.
That's my guy. I mean, he was my guy in the draft, and that's not why I'm picking him now. But of all the names that we've already gone through, this is the only one that speaks to me in any type of, and it's just youth and upside. That's really all it comes down to. Yeah, it's just. Youth and upside.
He's got some talent. Listen, we'll just do the rest of the names now. There's no reason to go 5 at a time. They all stink. You don't want any of them. Let's see. I mean, listen, you want to bring in Jimmy Garoppolo as a possible QB2? Okay. I mean, probably looking at vet minimum. Well, who's paying Jimmy Garoppolo anything? But you're not bringing him in to start.
No.
Here's the rest of the list.
Tyrod right there. That's all that is GQ Tyrod.
Carson Wentz, Case Keenum, Mason Rudolph, Easton Stick, who sounds like a movie character, Cooper Rush, Joshua Dobbs, Brandon Allen, Nick Mullins, Kyle Trask, Josh Johnson. Bring him in as a QB coach. That's my QB coach.
Yeah, that's.
He
threw for 300 yards in our offense once.
What's that? Yeah.
Josh Johnson threw for 300 yards once in our offense.
He did. Well, everybody did except Zach Wilson that year.
Yeah, that's true.
Russell Wilson, CJ Beathard, Teddy Bridgewater, another option for QB2. I'd bring him in for that. Jeff Driscoll, Brett Rippon, Tyler Huntley, Tim Boyle, Desmond Ridder, Bailey Zappi. I'd look at him for QB2 as well. Felipe Franks, Sam Ellinger, Tommy DeVito, and Daniel Jones. Now, why did I think the Vikings, when they added Daniel Jones, I thought they gave him a 2-year deal. It doesn't matter. He's on the list.
I thought they had like a restricted, like a right to first refusal with him because of the way that they did it. Maybe they were able to put him on a futures deal or something. I don't know how that.
They have him as unrestricted on Spot Rack.
I can't believe you didn't spend any time talking about 2-time Super Bowl champion Carson Wentz. Like why not fire up the? Aaron Glenn wants a winner. He didn't say he needs to be the starting quarterback winner.
Such a generic.
Mental and physical toughness. Maybe that's not Carson Wentz.
Who doesn't want a winner? Of course, everybody wants a winner.
And truthfully, all those things just kind of described Aaron Rodgers, if we're being honest. Winner, mental, physical toughness. I mean, it doesn't describe Carson Wentz, but he is a winner.
No, he's one of those guys. I think like him and Odell Beckham might be like they come to mind for me as guys who were like Carson Wentz. People forget in his like 3rd year, he was a legit MVP candidate.
Yeah, the year they won the Super Bowl.
It looked like the Eagles had their quarterback for the next 20 years.
Yep.
And fell off the face of the go back and look at Odell Beckham's numbers the first 3 years in the NFL. You looked at his numbers and thought if he plays 4 more years, he's going to the Hall of Fame. Like that's it. He's gonna at some point he's gonna have a couple of 2,000-yard seasons. Odell looked that good early on. Yeah. And then he just fell off the face of the earth. Or fell off a cliff production wise.
Yeah, I see this question in the chat, or this comment in the chat. If Justin Fields is the quarterback, will that make Garrett Wilson stay? Like, I don't know if that'll make him stay necessarily, because originally the report was him and Rodgers didn't get along, so he wanted to trade if Rodgers was staying. But then the report was he was more just tired of the revolving door at quarterback and not really, you're losing double-digit games every season. So is it the stability or was it Aaron Rodgers specifically? So if we just keep, turning over these quarterbacks,
I think he wants to stop losing.
Too. Yeah.
And
I don't know if Fields brings it in and it's like, okay, we're gonna win now just
That's
because
what
he
I
was my
mean. Like,
guy.
you might be my
Yeah,
guy from college, and
right.
it's cool that but I'm leaving. Sorry we
Yeah,
didn't overlap, but
yeah. We might have 1 year
good luck
together,
with the
or like,
Jets.
yeah.
I'm getting the hell out of here.
Because like realistically, like what is the record at the deadline? It's week 9. What if they're 3-6 and the team hates it here? And I'm not saying that is what's going to happen, but these are all the possibilities you have now that there is so much uncertainty at quarterback. I think that now you've opened the door. We can insert all these names and do the whole thing, but it's like, what's the wins at most? Is 7-10 enough to keep your core around? I don't know. Is that enough to establish the culture you want? I don't know. Again, I thought the expectation would be playoffs with a retool and Aaron Rodgers. It's hard to really, share that vision with another quarterback's name. Like maybe Derek Carr, and I still hate that because what I see from him on film and just watching Saints games, I don't like. And then his own wide receivers are talking crap about him, or well, I guess former wide receivers, but like
Yeah,
these guys don't want to
former
play offense with
psychotic
this
wide
guy.
receiver.
Yeah, yeah. Michael Thomas isn't necessarily the best source, but like he was really
Yeah,
going in on Kirk
exactly,
Cousins, and like
exactly.
I'm sure there's guys who share similar sentiment that currently play for the team that can't say those types of things.
I mean,
But like,
Devontae Adams wasn't one of them. They
ooh,
were
that's
like,
true. Yeah,
making reunification videos when he went to Oakland. Like, oh my
yeah,
God, like
yep.
that was his Aaron Rodgers back then.
Well, that's
How
the thing
about
too.
that?
Does
How about
does
if you
Carr
get
bring
Derek Carr?
Devontae?
Does
Yeah,
Devontae want to stay?
I don't think so. I don't
I
think
don't
so.
think so either.
I think the fact that the whole I want to play or I would potentially play on the West Coast for the Chargers or Rams, I think that signified that he obviously wasn't coming back, and that was probably like what was the tell sign that Rodgers wasn't coming back because he'd obviously be like, well, I want to stay with the Jets because Rodgers is going to stay with the Jets. So that was to me like the last signal of me finally just giving up like hope, I guess, that he was going to stay because it just felt like it wasn't going to happen ever since the I've never been cut by a teenager line.
Yeah, yeah. So real quick, let's go through a few names. You mentioned Derek Carr.
Hmm.
If he were to be let go by New Orleans, if Over the Cap has it right, trading Derek Carr post June 1st isn't a terrible hit. It's like a $10 million hit.
Hmm.
Like it's very doable. Obviously, if you're any team trading for him, you'd like to get him in before that. You don't want to wait that long in the
Yeah, it's
game.
hard
But
to wait.
if that's what you have to do to make it work financially, I would, again, based on the options out there, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I don't see it happening. Let's throw out a few veteran names. I'm going to throw out some names of guys who are starters or backups who may be good to okay, above average, but not great, not untouchable, not guys that a team is going to hang up the phone if you call. And just get your thoughts. So you call up the Cardinals and you ask for Kyler Murray. Are you interested in Kyler Murray, Dylan?
Absolutely. Yeah, I liked him coming out of college. I like his play style. I think he's got enough juice where he's better than every single option we've named. And if you're going to get as close to the production of Aaron Rodgers, this is probably the guy to do it.
Yeah, and he offers that dual threat that the
Hmm.
Jets are looking for, and I would I wouldn't mind that at
It's
all.
got
I
a pretty
mean,
deep ball. It's like the opposite of Fields. Like Fields doesn't have
yeah,
the arm, and I think Kyler has much of the arm with just as much of the athleticism. It just looks different because he's a smaller quarterback than Justin Fields. Like he's not going to put his shoulder down, but he's still going to, cut you up a little bit.
yep. We already talked about Andy Dalton. I'm just going through all of the depth charts here,
Hmm.
and I'm just stopping at guys like I said who make some sense. Again, we mentioned Dalton. He'll be a free agent, so you wouldn't be trading for him. Um, and this is why it sounds use this player to make a point because I've seen I'm always shocked when people make this argument because it's very much like when someone does make this argument, I'm like, is this person 12? Because that sounds like something I would say when I was 12. When you're talking about a particular player, whether or not they're good or not, and someone points to the team's record as evidence that the person isn't good. What do you mean
Yep.
that dude's good? He had 1,700 yards. His team missed the playoffs. Yeah, the team sucks. Like, they
Jamar
don't tell
Chase
me.
sucks because he won the Triple Crown and the Bengals missed the playoffs.
Well, that's the guy I was going to make. Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Dylan, Joe Burrow must be available. He
We
just
said
missed
he
the
should have been
playoffs.
MVP, but
His
didn't
career
make the playoffs.
record, he's barely above 500.
Yep.
He's a 500 quarterback. He's Gardner Minshew. Well, Minshew's below 500, but yeah, that when people come at me with a record when you're talking about an individual guy, just spare me. Joe Burrow did not go to the playoffs. Joe Burrow for his career is like 7 or 8 games over 500. You're not getting Joe Burrow. He's elite. Again, I think he should have been the MVP. Okay, so we talked about Jameis Winston. I would say Deshaun Watson, but he re-injured himself, so we'll get over that. Well,
even without that, I mean, that's a circus.
You couldn't pay me to put that guy on the roster.
There was a time where I wanted him. I won't lie, but then
everybody did at one point.
The allegations just kept pouring out, and it was like you can't get behind this. Like it's just morally you can't do it.
Dak. Dallas is not true. I thought the way Dallas talked about him after the playoffs 2 years ago, it felt like they were moving on.
That article was scathing.
Well, there was like a statement from the team, and they on their own website
threw him way under the bus.
Cowboys Twitter account was like, our quarterback's not that good. Whatever the hell it was.
Yep, he blew it.
It came after him in a way that you generally don't see teams talk about their own quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Hendon Hooker, not a proven guy, but now a guy. He's older, big arm, but he'll know the offense. He's been in the system for a few years. I'm not talking about giving up a 1 or a 2, but if I can get Hendon Hooker for a 6, I think I would do that.
Yeah, if he's competing with Jordan
I'm
Travis.
Not anointing him. He's not my starter, but I'm bringing him in.
He's competing with Jordan Travis at that point to be your QB3. You're probably still bringing in a veteran like Justin Fields, so your room would be Fields, Tyrod, and then Hooker. That would be my assumption. Like you couldn't even – I don't even know about a backup role because they chose Teddy Bridgewater as a high school coach coming off a championship with his team instead of Hendon Hooker in the playoffs. So that's a tough one for me. Wikipedia lies too, by the way. Somebody tried to tell me he's 23 years old. They said he was born in the 2000s, and that's not true. He was born in like 1998. He's 27 years old.
Yeah, I was going to say 26 or 27.
And he's thrown like 3 NFL passes. So what are you expecting out of it? But yeah, like you said, for a late day 3 flyer, absolutely give me him over Joe Milton too. Like the Joe Milton stuff is kind of wild.
Yeah, that's.
I got a quarterback for you, Trevor Lawrence. We don't know what the new regime's going to do. I assume Liam Cohen didn't take that job to then trade away his quarterback because that's one of the only attractive things I believe about Jacksonville, even though it's not a great contract. It's a good quarterback in my opinion. But like if they did decide, hey, we're going to potentially move off of Trevor, do you call? Because I feel like it could be a situation where they might be giving you capital to take the money aspect of it.
I mean, the problem right now, if you call us, no one's going to answer. They don't have a GM. But
which they just announced a couple minutes ago. They finished their interview with Chad Alexander, which Jets fans should be familiar with because he was on our staff at one point. So,
I would call. But as you said, if you're an offensive-minded head coach and you took that job, he's probably a big reason for it.
100%.
Unless you feel like you'd benefit with the draft capital. And try to draft one.
So now that you're mentioning that, because they have the 5th pick, we can just real quick. Would you trade up at any point if Cam Ward slides? Because there was a video that came out of Shadur Sanders working out in the gym, and they had ESPN in the background, and it had Shadur going 6 to the Raiders, which I think has been the popular thing.
Yeah.
Do you, if the draft falls like this, Abdul Carter 1, Travis Hunter 2, Shadur 3 to the Giants, Will Campbell 4 to the Patriots. Do you call the Jaguars and try to jump up from 7 to 5 to get Cam Ward if he's sliding? Do you hope that the Raiders don't take him at 6 because they've cleared their quarterback issue up in free agency? Or like, how would you approach that situation? Because I know we're big Cam Ward guys, but like, do you trade up knowing that our options are very, very limited?
I'm at least calling. Yeah, I mean, I'd be open to it. I'm not gonna give up like multiple ones to move up 3 spots.
Right.
But if we can swap picks and throw in a mid-rounder, I mean, what do you give him? You give him the 3 you got from Detroit, something like that, to move up a couple spots. But again, when you're talking quarterback, teams do try to gouge you. You know, they're like, we know you're not trading up for a guard. You know, we know you want to turn your franchise around, so this is going to require a couple of ones. I wouldn't do that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I would definitely look at moving up to grab Ward. Shador, I wouldn't. I think he'll be gone, and if he's not
Mhm.
gone, I don't. I just I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine having him on your roster with his dad having a Twitter account the first time
Mhm.
something doesn't go his way.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
first time you pull
That's
him because he's struggling. The first time he has a 4 interception game and his dad's
mhm.
on Twitter blaming the
And the media is
coaches.
ripping him, and yeah.
Yeah,
If we thought Aaron Rodgers was, not a distraction, but we wanted Glenn to be the face of the organization and not Aaron Rodgers, it'd be hard to sell the vision of, "Okay, let's go get Shedeur Sanders," and all that comes with him, and I know he's trying to separate from his dad in terms of that and be his own professional, and, we would love to hear that, but like you said, his dad has the right to free speech. He can say whatever he wants on Twitter, and it seems like he doesn't even want to be here, but everything I've heard from Shedeur, from him personally in videos, is he believes the top 3 picks are gonna be in whatever order, him, Cam, and Travis. He's like,
yeah.
"We're all boys, we're all gonna go top 3, that's just how we feel," but that's probably how I would lean too, so it might not even be a situation where they are in a position to trade up.
Yeah, I think there was a really good question. I was hoping to do it tonight, but there was too much to get through. I tried to go back and listen to like the last 3 months of the Spielman podcast. Even though I
Mhm.
listen daily, I wanted to refresh my mind, take notes on what he's saying about certain players. I made
'Cause it's
sure
important now. Yeah, it's very
it is.
important now.
It is. I was actually going to start the show with that tonight until the Rodgers news, and I thought, you know what, I have a few more to listen to. I'll throw out a couple things here before we sign off that were interesting. Um, but something he said they were doing, their version of like a mailbag, taking questions that fans were sending in, and like I said, love Spielman's personality. He'll if it's a dumb question, he'll laugh at it and say that's a dumb question. But this one, he actually said that's a really smart question, and I don't know the answer. And that somebody said this will be the first time in how long that Shador will be playing for someone other than his dad. Like, how is he going to respond to that?
Good
We've
point.
all seen the pregame walk they take on the
Mhm.
sideline, putting his arm around him, giving him a hug. That's gone, and it may not matter. It might not be a thing. But when he struggles, when things aren't going well, not having a guy in his father that he can go to and talk to a certain way, will that impact? I don't know. But here's the thing though, with the Jets and Shador, to me, it's a moot, it's a non-issue. I don't think I think the Jets will 100% be one of those teams that Prime calls and says, just don't draft him. Because if
Mhm.
you do, we're demanding a trade. We need to go somewhere where they're where that team has done something in the last 50 years to prove they can develop a quarterback, and you do not
Mhm.
fit that description. So I think he's a non-issue. I don't think he gets. I'll tell you what. I don't think he gets past the Raiders if they haven't gone out and gotten Darnold or somebody like that.
Yeah.
If he does, to me, that's about as damning as it gets. Because how many times have we heard that Tom Brady is a mentor and Tom Brady is a guy he calls when he has questions and he's at his disposal and he's been a big part of his life. If
Mhm.
Brady's been all there for him like that, and it's like, like that's other teams going to be like, well, if Tom doesn't want him, like I think that'll be like a draft day moment. Every GM's calling GMs. What do you know? Why didn't you take him? What's going on? We thought
Who went
Brady
to his
loved this
birthday
kid.
party?
Yeah, exactly,
Yep.
exactly. So we'll and just want to jump this in the chat real quick with Lauren, because this is what I've said. To me, Spielman is the best hire of the offseason.
Mhm.
You're getting a guy with a million years of experience. You're getting a guy who I have jokingly said went and evaluated players at the Senior Bowl this year. He's had his good moves. He's had his bad moves. He's but he's an experienced voice in the room. And one thing I did notice in looking at Spielman, looking at his history, looking at um, George Payton's history with Denver, because he was Spielman's right hand man for so many years. I noticed this, and then it did come up. Again, another show that Scott did on Spielman's history, and Spielman did say to reporters one time that he likes to have 10 picks per draft. He always wants to. He doesn't always get there, but his goal is to have 10 picks. And I thought, well, let's see if George Payton followed that model because he's the guy that Moogie was working under. Now with Payton, it's tough because he's had 4 drafts, but 2 of them were post Sean Payton hiring. And I
Mhm.
kind of feel like Sean Payton walked in the door and said, "We're going to do what I want to do because
Mhm.
you're all about to get fired. So we can keep doing it your way, or you can listen to me for a couple years." So through his first 2 drafts, um, Peyton did have 20 picks. He had 10 picks one year. He had 9 picks another year. Then once Peyton got there, they had like 5 and 7 or something like that. So Spielman made it a priority to have 10. Peyton had 19 in 2 drafts, so he's one shy of 10 per draft. And the Jets don't have 10. Well, we'll see what happens with comp picks, but it'll be interesting to see if Spielman, encourages them to move down where they can and add some selections. But either
Yeah,
way,
that is interesting. I'm looking at their all-time history. 2022, they had 9 picks. 2021, they had 10. 2020, they had 10.
was
I don't
Peyton
know if
there in
you.
2020 though. I thought they
I don't.
hired
I
him in
don't. I don't. I don't
2021.
remember how far back, but it was at least right before he got there.
Yeah, if
But
you
they're
look at the
good draft
Vikings with
classes.
Spielman, I think they said one year he had like 16 or 17 picks.
Yeah,
It's
because he
the
was
old
there in
Jimmy Johnson
2021.
philosophy.
He was there
Bring in
in
as many guys as
2021, right?
possible, and what's that?
He was there in 2021, right?
Yeah, and they
Yeah,
had
because
10
that
that
draft
year.
class was Surtain, Javonte Williams, who he got hurt, but he was a good player.
Yeah,
Quinn Miners, who was a great player. Baron Browning, who I believe they traded, but he was a great player. He got back good capital. Caden Stearns, I don't think he did much, but then you had Jonathan Cooper in the 7th round and Marquise Spencer. So like you got 4 or 5 really good players out of that one draft. So
yeah,
I would agree that I think we have 8 picks right now. If they could get up
I
to
think
9,
so.
I think that'd be great. But again, I think 8 plus is a good start for your draft classes.
Yeah, so
Having 6 or less is very hard. It's very hard.
yeah, the most important thing to me, and the first thing I went back to listen to with Spielman, him and Ryan Wilson as hosts, they would do every single week during the college season. They would update their top 5 quarterbacks in college football.
Hmm.
Sticking with draft eligible guys, of course. And I think there were probably quite a few changes early on, but that's because such a small sample size. But as the season went on, they didn't change their rankings that dramatically. And Spielman had he had Cam number 1, Shador number 2, Jalen Milroe number 3, which I thought was somewhat of a surprise. But the one that the name that keeps surfacing now, right? Who Charlie White says is going to be a number 1 pick or a
Hmm.
first round pick, Jackson Dart. Spielman had him 6, but that was pre-Senior Bowl, and then he did say at the Senior Bowl, he said he thought Dart looked better in person than he did on film, and he said to remember that last year nobody was calling Bo Nix a first round pick when they left Mobile. Everybody said Bo Nix was a 2nd or 3rd round guy. He ends up going 11th all overall. So perhaps Jackson Dart starts climbing boards. Like I said, he was 6th for Spielman. I have a bunch of notes that I took.
Did
I
he have
might do
Howard
like
on that list anywhere?
Will Howard was up there. He had him sort of neck and neck with Quinn Ewers, who I believe he had Ewers behind um, uh,
Dart.
Milroe. Like
Oh,
I
okay.
think what
So
I'm
they
gonna
were 4
do.
or 5. They were above Dart then.
Yeah, Dart was
Oh,
6.
okay. Okay.
But as I said, I basically I took a ton of notes as I was doing it, and I thought
Mm.
because I needed to get the Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl episodes listened to again, even though I've listened to
Hmm.
them already. That's why I didn't do that show tonight. I might do something during the week where I say like, here's Rick Spielman's notebook, or his mental notebook over the past few months regarding prospects. He did say one of his they asked him for a hot take one episode, and Spielman's hilarious. I love Spielman. He actually, do you know who Harry Mack is?
Yeah, the freestyler. Yeah.
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 Apparently, like last year during the draft, or while it might have been while they were at the combine, Ryan Wilson's like, every time I looked over at Rick, he's laying on the couch listening to Harry Mack.
Oh my God.
Apparently, he's a big Harry Mack guy. So
That's
that's what I
funny.
can tell you about Rick Spielman. He loves Hallmark movies, he loves pickleball, and he loves Harry Mack. Those were 3 points where they were always busting his chops and having a good time over it. I guess there was like a Hallmark movie being filmed not far from where he lived, and he didn't know about it. And like an
Oh,
NFL coach got in on it, and they were like, "Dude, how did you not know?" They were right down the street.
oh my
So
gosh.
Spielman wasn't happy that his agent didn't get the word in to get him in the Hallmark movie. Um,
He definitely
Funny
seems
dude,
like a
man.
funny personality, yeah, I think everything
He
we've seen from him, even, like, the video of him with the Vikings when
yeah,
the Eagles drafted Rager, like, you see their personalities more because they're in their home setting for those drafts in the
yeah.
COVID year, so it was
Yeah,
kinda
that's the
like
thing, COVID year made everything a little
their
different too.
like, their hair was down a little bit, like, they're just chilling, like, their kids are around them when they're making the picks, so you got to see a little bit, so I think it's cool that his personality is what it is, and I do agree, I think it is probably the best hire that even above the Aaron Glenn hire to me, I think Spielman was a very good hire for the team.
Yeah, but they did ask him at one point, they said, "Come on, Rick, give us a hot take," because he doesn't do a lot of hot takes, he just
Mhm,
says what he thinks.
sure.
Um, but he said maybe the Penn State tight end, Warren, he said he can be a top 10 pick.
Mm,
He said he thinks he'll go higher than Brock Bowers. Didn't he also loved I remember early in the year he had Colston Loveland above him.
yeah,
But I
some
think
people did to begin the season,
yeah,
yeah.
I think over time Warren moved up a spot. But as others have said, because I've seen a few people say, they would take Warren in the top 10, even if he's not as good as Bowers, because you had 5 quarterbacks go before Bowers went. So
Mhm.
if there's only 2 going and 5 went last year,
He's probably gonna get
like
pushed up the board, yeah.
if
Plus, there's
Bowers
less
was in
blue
this
chip
year's class.
talent, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
Bowers would
that's
probably be in the discussion for number 1 overall. Obviously, people would use hindsight of his rookie year, but if he was
right.
in this draft class, I think that would be a fair expectation for him to be in the top 3 to 5 at the worst.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I mean, look, he's gonna go early, but Spielman thinks that highly of him. He thinks he's a
Yeah.
top 10
S
pick.
somebody
Um,
compared Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland, basically, you're getting either Gronk or Kelsey, and that's lofty, of course, but, like,
of course.
Gronk would be Tyler Warren, and
Yep,
then Kelsey would
would be
be
Loveland.
Colston Loveland, and I'm like, "Hey, I mean, I would like either one, so
If
I'm
you
not
look, if you
opposed,
get a
but"
guy who can give you 70% of their production
Yes.
and you get him in the first round, you've hit a home run. I mean, those are
Yep,
2 of the
especially if
all-time
you could
greats,
trade
obviously.
down 3 picks, get a little cute, and still get the tight end you want, whatever, at pick 11 or whatever, instead of pick 7.
Yep, I wholly agree. Let's take a look. I'm gonna flip through a couple more depth charts. There's really not I mean, a lot of these teams, when you do stuff like this, you realize how many teams really do. Even teams that don't quote unquote need a quarterback, they kind of need a quarterback. Like the Colts,
Yeah.
like,
It's the have or the have-nots,
are we going to
honestly.
say they don't need one? They have a
No, they
guy
need
who
one.
quit on them, and the backup is Joe Flacco, who's a million years old. So, you look at a team like that. Kansas City's backup, of course, is Carson Wentz, who we've discussed. I mean, the Raiders right there with the Jets, they need 2 or 3 quarterbacks. Um, I mean, I guess if you kept Minshew and you kept O'Connell, one of those guys could be a backup, I guess.
Sure, yeah.
They're just not starter material, really. Um, Tanner McKee in Philly, third stringer, productive in college. Their backup is Kenny Pickett. Um, Neither one of those guys. I mean, McKee again, he might be the guy you look at and say, is he an upside guy? Because Pickett hasn't been very good.
Mhm.
There's
That's like
been
the
a
Hendon
lot of
Hooker, to me. Tanner McKee would be just like Hendon Hooker.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Tampa Bay's got Kyle Trask and Michael Pratt. You're not trading for those guys and expecting them to do anything.
What about Malik Willis in, Green Bay? He did
Funny
alright as
enough,
a backup.
that was I must have scrolled off it. That was the name I had up when we got off the topic. Because that was one I looked at and kind of went, maybe. But then
Mhm.
I went, you're really going to call Green Bay about another quarterback?
Yeah,
Maybe
how
let's
well is
lay
that gonna
off
go
that for a
over?
little while. But yeah, I would have no objections to bringing him in. So look, there are a couple of mid to lower tier. Well, no, there are a couple of lower tier guys who maybe you can make a call, whether it's someone like Hooker. I guess Kyler Murray might be top of the list. Derek Carr, if you think he might be traded after June 1st. But it's ugly. It's
Yeah.
ugly. That's what it comes down to. The Jets are not are very well, and of course J.J. McCarthy, who we didn't talk about this show, but said in previous episodes, he'd be
Mhm.
QB1 in this class. If you can get him, I would have no problem with that. It's just a matter of how much do you pay, and what if, and I would imagine a couple of teams are going to be interested.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so Mike in the chat says Bo Nix was his QB1. I like Nix, but I wouldn't have had him over Daniels or May.
Yeah,
Um,
he would have been 4th at best for me, and I
yeah,
don't
that's
even
kind
think
of.
I'd have had him that high.
I said he had a shot to go top 10, which he did, and he went 11. But QB1, no, not. I mean, May and Williams, as I said last year, I kept flipping them. I like May better. Um, Williams, I think I was guilty of buying into the hype a little bit because I went into the year with May as my QB1,
Mhm.
and eventually came off of that. But he, as you see in college, he lost a ton of weapons. Um, you can make a case for either guy. Put it this way: if you
Yeah,
ended up with any of those quarterbacks, you should be very happy. That's
yeah,
what matters really.
yeah.
And Nick's was the fourth. So those four I would place all four of those guys above both the guys in this year's class.
Mhm.
Um,
People are
but I
gonna
would have
probably hate on this, but because it's Ohio State, but if you filled the room with Justin Fields, Will Howard, and Tyrod Taylor, I guess that would be the most inspiring of your options because then you're selling me a short to long term option with Fields while you're
yeah.
developing a guy in Will Howard. I know people will be like, but Ohio State, and it's like, okay, yeah, I get it, but like they currently have a good one in the NFL now in CJ Stroud, so is it really a QB school? Not really, but like I think Will Howard was impressive in the later part of the season, and if he went to Mobile, he probably would be getting the hype that Jackson Dart is getting. But obviously, he just came off the natty, so he wasn't gonna, you know, practice. And although Riley Leonard did practice and he lost, but I thought Will Howard could have improved his stock in the way
And
Jackson Dart did.
Quinn Ewers, the injury history hurts him.
Yeah, he's
You know.
small, he's injured. When his
Yep.
backup came in, I know he's more polarizing, but he did better in certain moments. But I mean, Quinn Ewers has his upside, but again, like these are all day 3 guys to me. Like Will
Yeah.
Howard maybe in the 3rd, Jackson Dart in the 3rd, but like Milrow now dropped to the 3rd for me. I don't like there's not a first round guy other than Cam and Shadur, and they're top end first round. Then I don't have a guy until the beginning of the 3rd round
Yeah.
in Milrow, Dart, and Howard, and they're kind of in a cluster together, and it's like they all have their problems. Like I'm
And
putting together a
and
slideshow for Will Howard that I'm going to put out on the probably once the combine ends, but like the pros and cons for all these guys are just so drastically different. Like the pros and cons of Milrow are so different than the pros and cons of Howard, which when
oh
I
yeah.
get to Dart, I'm sure the pros and cons of Howard and Dart are going to be so different too. So
Yeah.
it's all these different things. So it's
That
pick your
one thing,
poison
and
or
I
pick your
saw it. Well,
flavor.
I saw it in the Florida game. Saw it in a few games because Dart does like to throw the ball downfield. But one
Mhm.
thing that, and I heard Spielman say it today, and it was something I've noticed. It kind of separates him from the other, really from Cam, is that Cam can just flick it. Cam's got that live arm, you
Yeah.
know, 30, 40 yarder, boom, just flicks his wrist. Whereas Dart's like, he's got to get his whole body behind it and kind of get
Yeah.
everything he can behind the ball. So he
And I
can
think the
push it
same
down
for
the
Will
field.
Howard.
They can push it down the field, but they don't have that natural, that arm talent where the ball just comes out of their hand and it just where it looks effortless.
Yeah.
It looks like he's having to put everything he's got into it, which is fine. You put the ball on target, that's their job. But
Yeah.
when a guy can make it look a lot easier and get it done a lot quicker, get that ball out quicker, um, that's that's
And
something
Cam
that's
can
going to
do it
jump
when
out.
he's fading away too. Like he doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily need to be driving into his throws. He could be fading away on a bad platform and still make it work. Yeah, my two of the 3 cons for Howard were deep accuracy and arm strength. I felt like anytime he tried to push the ball over 40 yards, it was inaccurate, underthrown, intercepted. Most of
yeah,
them, obviously not every single one, but and you
yeah.
have
Whereas
good wide
Dart has
receivers
the
downfield.
accuracy.
Yeah,
Dart does a great job of just putting the ball where it needs to be.
yeah. It's more the
Except that,
mechanics with Dart and things like
yeah,
that that kind of worry me. Where the mechanics are a big pro for Will Howard. I love the way that he gets into his drop. He doesn't, he's not heel clicky like JT O'Sullivan uses at the back of his drop. Puts all his cleats in the ground and throws, and I think that's really important. So like, do you want the mechanics or do you want the traits and the upside? It's all going to be what Glenn and Muji decide that they prefer at the position. But there's just things to like and not like about him, which make them hard evaluations.
and that's the thing is the it does seem that he wants a running type, and that would take some of those guys off the list. I mean, Dart's
Mhm.
athletic enough.
Sure. Howard is
Um,
too. I think, he's got enough
Howard's got a little bit
athleticism,
of
but
athleticism, but so
yeah.
like some of the later round guys, I love Curtis Rourke's arm. I
Mhm.
think Curtis Rourke does a nice job of putting touch on the ball when he has to. He can throw with plenty of zip, but again, like the Hendon Hooker thing, he's 26 years old. Is that going to
Yeah.
turn? There's another Rick Spielman note. over the years, Ryan Wilson has asked him about players. Rick, what about this guy? You care about his age? Like, no. If I think he can play, he can play. Like, if you think you can bring a guy in and get, even if you're, say, an 8-year starter, I would take that at this point.
I think
I'm
a
going to say
3-year
no to
starter.
drafting a guy who's going to be a good quarterback for 8 years?
Yeah.
Give me a guy to be a good quarterback for 8 games. You know, like
seriously.
I think too much is made of that. Now I get when you say like a guy, he's already hit his, he's only got so much more room to improve, because I get that. But doesn't mean the guy can't play. But
like,
it does,
what would
like
the
a guy
narrative
like
be?
York.
What would the narrative be if Jaden Daniels never brought the Commanders back to the NFC Championship game, but he had a really stellar first season? Like, would it be he's a bust, or would it be, what would that be? It's just so hard to. You could have one good year and everything just changes for your team. Your quarterback could have a good year and everything changes. So like it's hard to say, like, just give me a guy that can play good for like a couple seasons even,
That's the point we're at. Like, yeah, it's terrible, it's ugly, but we'll wrap this one up. There you have your free agent options and a few names of guys you might be able to trade for, with a couple tidbits from Spielman. And like I said, I will I've just got to do the Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl episodes again to pluck the names off of there, and then I'm going to sit down and maybe do an hour where I go through, because listen, here's why it's important. I remember years ago, the Darnold draft, actually, somebody messaging me the morning of that draft and saying, the smoke screens have started. Did you see? Because remember, the 99.9% consensus was Darnold was going number 1 overall. And like for a year, it was nonstop.
Until the day of the draft,
Day of, someone sends me a message. Oh, do you see this smoke screen that the Browns are sending out that they might take Baker Mayfield? I said, listen, and this is the exact situation the Jets are in right now. I said, before the Browns hired Scott McCloughan as an advisor, he's in that room now. He's a respected voice, former GM. He said on a podcast months ago that he thought Baker Mayfield was the best quarterback in this class. I said, I'm not saying they won't take Darnold, but that's more than just a smokescreen. We know for a fact a highly thought of guy in that room sees him as QB1. So there's at least one voice in that room saying to take him.
Right.
If he convinces them, maybe it's him. And so, look, I'm not saying we're going to unlock the Jets draft because we have some Rick Spielman comments, but it might give us a look into how he views some of these guys and how that could affect those guys on the Jets draft board. That'll wrap this one up. As I said, plenty of QB info, more to come throughout the week. Like we'll get a Spielman episode done where we talk about some of his thoughts on the draft over the past, mainly focused on the past 3-4 months, as we've gotten more film on these guys. And we'll go up through the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Bowl. I don't believe he was at the Shrine Bowl, but I believe he'll be talking about the players. Ryan Wilson was there. Spielman wasn't there because he was working for the Jets. But Spielman wrapped up his gig with the Jets a day or two before the Senior Bowl kicked off. So we got down there and did the evals, and he gave his thoughts on the air about what he thought of players in Mobile. So that'll be good to go over, I believe, in the next few days. Have a good one, Jets fans.